nylon's number one used material in all of automotive and all, if you pick up a plastic widget, it's probably ABS. If it's not ABS, it's probably nylon. And that's just the hierarchy of information. And back then, nylon wasn't being printed. So I was like, well, if the most popular plastics are nylon and ABS and polypropylene, how come nylon and polypropylene aren't equivalently represented in desktop 3D printing? And it turns out there are some hurdles, Garolite and some glue stick go a long way, and an all metal hot end. But that wasn't commonplace back then, way back then, 5 years ago.
Hello there, Internet. My name is Adam Fosnot. I'm a mechanical engineer, and I have been working with 3D printers of all shapes and sizes for over 7 years. I've worked with machines from under $200 to over $200,000, and I have learned so much in the process. One thing I noticed is that a 3D printer tends to be judged on two extremes, one being a press release where everything is shiny and perfect, and the other being a YouTube review where a lot of times every product gets criticized. Another insight is that there tend to be two worlds in 3D printing, one being the industrial space and the other the hobby space, and those two worlds rarely talk to each other. This podcast breaks down those barriers to have a transparent, no BS conversation about the world of 3D printing and technology. I'm so happy to have you on board. Let's get started. To kick things off, can you introduce yourself and MatterHackers to the audience?
Gotcha, yeah. Hey, I'm Dave from MatterHackers, and we are a kind of one-stop shop in digital manufacturing and excited to aid anybody through their process of getting across the line of, getting used to 3D printing, understanding the materials, or expanding what anybody really thought was possible with 3D printing, and that makes me really excited.
Awesome. Helping people understand what's possible with 3D printing is a great mission. And not an easy task either. So we'll dive into all aspects of that and what you guys do to help the audience get to know you a little bit better. Could you share something about yourself outside of what you do for work?
Sure, yeah. Outside of work, I find myself, mostly just raising a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old at the moment.
Okay.
But that's an insane amount of time that, sort of suppresses other things that I used to find myself doing much more. But I like to surf, I like to mountain bike ride. I'm a huge nerd and love just getting outside.
Gotcha. Nice. I love hiking as well. I've never been surfing. I have horrible balance. I don't know if I'd be very good at it, but I can appreciate that about you.
Yeah, it's not terribly hard. Like anything, I think of it, technically, and surfing is just trying to become really efficient at like a very narrow scope of things. Like the hardest part about surfing is actually paddling out through the waves and getting into the lineup. But if you can find ways to duck dive and get through that pretty quickly, it's all about finding those efficiencies. So,
gotcha. Great advice for next time I get to the ocean.
Yeah, there you go.
Looking at MatterHackers, you guys are a brand that I've recognized for what seems like forever in the 3D printing space. When did you actually get started?
MatterHackers got started in 2012, and two of the founders are programmer guys that had a video game company that they sold to Amazon.
Okay.
And then sort of when their time at Amazon was completed, they saw the opportunity to sort of tackle software in 3D printing. So MatterControl was born, and they needed a company name around MatterControl, and so came up with MatterHackers. So MatterControl was really the first product that MatterHackers had in general. Along the way, we started selling a roll of filament and then realized, selling filament kept lights on much more effectively than giving away free software. And then we just kind of started, we got really lucky with timing. Like actually MakerBot was like out of stock one week, and we had like a dozen rolls hanging out in the background that we sold through pretty quickly, which allowed us to get like a pallet next and slowly grew there. And then it wasn't until a couple years later that we started selling hardware, like the actual 3D printers. But meanwhile, in the background, we're all just a bunch of huge nerds at MatterHackers and kept developing MatterControl and creating printers and looking at hardware opportunities and, just looking for creative ways to lead the technology, whether it was hardware, whether it was software or materials, which is, I think, where a lot of the industry has grown over the last couple of years and still has a lot of room to grow moving forward.
Yeah, I agree. So materials, software, and hardware, all of which have grown so much over the years. Mm-hmm. And I think there is still plenty of room to grow. What is or was MatterControl?
MatterControl is a slicing engine. It's a software platform that we developed early on. Honestly, it came to be because Repetier Host was so egregiously bad and had a terrible UI in 2011, 2012, 2013, that time frame, that was what, specifically Lars thought was the opportunity to be had. So we created a MatterControl as a software platform, open source, free to use, slicing engine. It now has design features in it where you can drag in cubes and stretch them and subtract circles and kind of really create a bunch of stuff.
Okay.
And we're always looking to sort of expand what is possible with creating kind of, easy for users to get started in creating digital designs and then succeeding on printing on any number of pieces of hardware to be able to tune in profiles and have a lot of customizability to really succeed at any of the hardware, the materials, and those things. Those are always three pillars that we're constantly trying to chop down and make easier and more approachable for everybody.
Gotcha. Okay. And so it's still around. It's still free, open source. What platforms does it run on?
Windows, Mac, Linux, so runs on all of them. You can go find it right now at MatterHackers. I'll take the opportunity to strike that plug. But yeah, you can go download it and play around with it. It'll be both very familiar to most of the other slicing engines out there and have a bunch of little nooks and crannies that we've built in along the way that, just trying to either keep up with things and then B, really push technology and how people perceive it to be both approachable and, at the end of the day, very usable. So,
okay, cool. So all the normal platforms, and then, to your point, it's tough to keep the lights on giving away a product for free.
Turns out,
did you guys start selling filament pretty quickly? Was this 2012, 2013 timeframe, or did it take a little while with you guys focusing on the software before you expanded?
Looking back on it retrospectively, it all happened really quickly.
Okay.
But that's a sort of a relative statement. But everything kind of piled up, and we're just, and still to this day looking to meet people's needs. Hey, what's your needs? What do you need in having to do with 3D printing? It turns out a lot of people that were using our software needed materials, and we already had contact with them. So why not try to be a provider of materials, and then keep that escalating forward, provider of hardware, things like that. So
sure. And so the first batch of material that you guys got, did you make it yourself? Did you find it from someone within the United States, internationally? How'd you go about sourcing it?
Our first rolls were just U.S. sourced great materials that we had been using all along, and there was an opportunity to sort of bring it in under a first party name, something that was very traditionally done back then, frankly. We didn't dabble overseas. We thought it was really important to be sort of American made. That was that again, that same story just kept snowballing, and we'd sort of uncover opportunities. And I think along the way, one of the coolest things we've been able to do is start to create some of these new materials and that people are talking about, PTG sort of started eating ABS's lunch sometime in 2015. And that was something that I was really excited about because ABS was never abundantly easy to print. Mm-hmm. And PTG shares a lot of the same properties. And then even moving forward to nylons, Taylor and myself got really dirty in forums on how to print with trimmer line.
Oh
and
no!
And then realized, there's a lot of frankly weird false information about Trimmerline and how impossible it is to print with, we'd buy that stuff by the 10-pound spools and run through it in a week or two.
No way.
Making real parts that we were selling to people. And I think one of the successes of MatterHackers along the way is like surfacing that information and providing it in an elegant way that people happened to find when they were searching Google, or we'd make a quick video about it, and it was, turned out super informative.
Yeah, how to succeed when printing blank. I've referenced your guys' articles so many different times when I'm looking at different profiles for different machines trying to dial things in. So I think there's a ton of value there. So ABS was a starting point for materials. That's kind of the same story I've heard from a lot of different people that started right at the boom of 3D printing in 2012. From there, did you do PLA, PETG? Because now you guys have hundreds of different filaments. Is that fair?
Thousands.
Thousands.
Yeah, there are thousands of SKUs at MatterHackers web shop.
Okay, gotcha. What kind of helped you guys decide what to bring on next? Was it just hearing feedback from customers? Was it you guys looking at the market? What drove those decisions?
The same thing that drives them today. If I am an engineer by trade, I spent 10 years in the medical device industry. So when I was running marketing at MatterHackers, it was really just like, what are people looking to succeed with? Like, what are they looking to use? What parts are they looking to make? What are the mechanical properties of those components and parts that they're looking to make? And what are the materials that they would succeed at? And nylon's number one used material in all of automotive and all, if you pick up a plastic widget, it's probably ABS. If it's not ABS, it's probably nylon. And that's just the hierarchy of information. And back then, nylon wasn't being printed. So I was like, well, if the most popular plastics are nylon and ABS and polypropylene, how come nylon and polypropylene aren't equivalently represented in desktop 3D printing? And it turns out there are some hurdles, Garolite and some glue stick go a long way, and an all-metal hot end. But that wasn't commonplace back then, way back then, 5 years ago. And I think just bringing that to market is, we were helping people get parts that they wanted to print. Like that was the end of the story. People were asking for it, and I myself was in those nooks and corners of those forums figuring out how people were succeeding in their garage. And there was just an opportunity, honestly, for a technically savvy people with a platform and a brand to bring that towards normal, and that happened to be MatterHackers. Could have been anybody. We got really lucky with timing, I believe, is actually the case there. We also took like a step towards video, I think, earlier than most of the desktop 3D printing industry anyhow. So, those couple things coming together, like I said, MatterHackers just got really lucky along the way.
I think there was definitely some luck to it in your timing. But I think there's definitely something to be said for digging in those forums and hearing what people want and then going after it. So I don't want you to sell yourself short.
And a nuance, we weren't digging in those forums. We were those forums. We were participating deeply. And we, especially Taylor, who oversees our R&D department at MatterHackers right now, also a buddy from college, as these, California startup company stories go. And, we'd spend a week trying to investigate what the best bed leveling mechanism is. What's the best electronic device to level your bed? Is it resistive? Is it touch probes? Is it the capacitive sensing? Like, what's the best solution? And we do like a lot of R&D, and then we put it in a forum on, I don't know, at the time, CME CNC's forum was like, pretty popular place, but only people who were in CME CNC's forum were seeing that. And not to say that wasn't a significant portion of the community, it really was. But I feel like it wasn't getting to the next wider audience. So one day we were like, well, screw it. Let's put it up as an article. Maybe people read it. And it remains one of the, top articles on MatterHackers.com at the moment. So I've said this for years. Everything we do is standing on the shoulders of the community. Like that's, I wear that proudly rather than like, we're digging in and trying to scheme these things up. It's, there's like a lot of work that has been done over the years that, standing on the shoulders of the community is the best way that I think I can describe that sort of, the process and the success we've seen there.
Sure. No, I love that insight, because I think in the hobby space, community is very strong, and you can learn so much from so many different people. MatterHackers, from what I can tell, definitely has a hobby element to it, but you guys also offer more engineering grade and industry focused products. How does that balance work for you guys? Do you notice anything if the hobby space is very supportive and sharing? How does that differ from the industrial space? Hey there, it's Adam. If you're enjoying this video, could you go ahead and tap the like button? It's totally free for you, and through the magic of internet algorithms, it will help more people see the podcast. Thanks.
Supportive and sharing, I think, is a cornerstone of how we were built, and the open sourceness of nearly everything we create. So they don't butt heads at all. Like I actually think I am a specific use case of success where if I didn't, go leave my, cozy medical device R&D engineer job, I am a hobbyist 3D printer who happened to do it. I've been doing it for 20 years now.
Gotcha.
I learned how to 3D print at Cal Poly, the university I went to, in the mechanical engineering department. I still have my first 3D print that's 18, 19 years old at this point. And, I represent exactly that use case. Someone who is a hobbyist who successfully brought it to a Fortune 500 company to bring it into their R&D department. And I think that overlap is just still constantly happening. That said, MatterHackers as a web shop, we try to make it as easy so that if someone wants one thing, they successfully get it arriving at their doorstep magically in 2 days, as the internet has this habit of making you think is really easy. It's really difficult. That said, if someone wants to write a PO and order 20 machines and 1,000 rolls of filament, you can call us and we can succeed at that as well. But our business remains pretty evenly split between hobbyists and professionals, and even education and government are a part of the segments that we serve as well.
Okay. You mentioned some of the challenges with fulfillment. What did fulfillment look like when you first started shipping physical products, I'll say, and how has that evolved over time?
A lot of Dave sweat on cardboard boxes and sticky tapey fingers. That's how it looked like everybody who's ever tried to ship one thing or 1,000 things. But we've slowly grown it over time. We have a couple warehouses across the U.S. that are all owned by us, so we don't do any third-party logistics, which just allows us to have the control that we think our customers deserve in terms of timeliness and understanding where their components are and things. So we've been able to integrate that pretty effectively into our website, which we've also built from scratch. When you have software-minded people, you end up developing these things all in-house rather than just... some days it seems so easy to fire up a Shopify rather than build it ourselves, but some of the features and integrations we're able to offer are really unique for that reason. So
you're not on Shopify?
No.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I thought for sure it was Shopify. And I'll also say, I thought for sure you used third-party fulfillment of some kind.
No, we're stubborn enough to have invested all of that ourselves. So we have our own shipping teams, we have our own development team, keeping the website alive and boxes going out the door at 24/7 essentially.
That is no small feat. I think I remember when I ordered my first roll of material from you guys, probably in 2016.
Okay.
And it shipped the same day, and I was shocked. I didn't think for the slightest minute that was all done internally.
Yeah, I might have licked the stamp, you know?
That's too funny. But I think it says a lot about you and the founding team, where you have so much pride in your work and the customer experience to do all of this internally and source as much as you can from the US. In the same line of materials, you guys recently started selling photopolymer resin, right? Not just filament?
I think that's going to be a huge part of the growth of the industry over the next couple of years is our resins. My analogy is always like, oh, resin printing. Ooh, that's too gross. Wait, it's only $200? Yeah, I'm in now. You know, like, I don't know why price and ickiness were so bipolarized until they came together and made a unified solution. But I think it's great technology. Some of the, frankly, less expensive machines are very capable. You know, you think of resin 3D printing as being an expensive $5,000-$10,000 adventure, but yeah, man, for a couple $100 for one of those overseas machines, like, they're very capable. And I think the success we've had with sort of developing our own materials in the FDM space, like, transfers very nicely over. You know, most of our customers are interested in resin 3D printing as well. So we just launched the MH Build resin, totally formulated in-house, and crazy that we were actually able to succeed at a few of our goals of price point, safe, and easy to use. Like, that almost never happens. And somehow we got a little bit lucky that our team, both our R&D team and our production team, have been able to really succeed at that. And it's been a fun adventure.
Can you explain, like I'm 5, how do you formulate a UV curable resin?
A UV curable resin. You take magical ingredient number 1, mix it with magical ingredient number 2, you try it, it fails, you add some magic ingredient number 3, and then you get a solution. Then you try to add color to it, and it botches the whole thing, so you got to find a different color, and then you got to bring back the colors, and then you got to do... It's like developing anything. You certainly don't succeed on the first try. And again, a really important point for us was price. Like, we think that the industry is going to grow rapidly at certain price points, and we want to be participating in that. But yeah, I mean, it's just chemistry, which is both the simplest thing to say and the hardest thing to execute.
Sure. How long did it take from, I guess, getting together as a team and saying this is something that we want to pursue and having the product ready to go?
On paper, we gave ourselves about 3 months, but as with anything, it takes an order of magnitude more time, so it was more like 3 years.
Okay.
But yeah, specifically MH Build resin, from, sort of the idea of it to finally publishing it was about 18 months.
Okay.
But that, we're also, again, in my analogy of, standing on the shoulders of the community, we've got really great people who've got a lot of experience in resin 3D printing. So we didn't start from zero. This wasn't like, I don't know what flour and sugar are. Let's go bake some cookies. We have got some really great, the team has really great knowledge of the basics of, what it means to put in blockers that succeed at 104 or 405 nanometer wavelength light, and to be able to go there. So we didn't start from nothing, but it was about 18 months of sort of upfront investment of time and materials and warm bodies to make sure that it was all working.
Yeah, that's still quite a journey to formulate your own resin and bring it to market. If I formulate a resin and I want someone to make it for me at scale, what do you do? Where do you go? Do you just type in ThomasNet and look for resin makers? Or do you have a question about 3D printing? If so, I would love to answer it. Feel free to leave any questions in the comments down below, or go to 3dprintauthority.com/forums to submit your question. Thanks.
Well, you'll discover a theme here.
Okay.
We sort of are dumb enough or smart enough, depending on which day you catch me. We sort of we do it mostly in house. Like, we have a couple local partners that are helping us, but like a good majority, it is sort of done under MatterHackers control. So I would be as naive as you of where to start to get some of that stuff made. I'm sure there's compounding houses that might answer a call, but.
So you're telling me that you guys have, like, vats of material that you're mixing at scale and making all these resins?
Yeah.
I'm learning so much. Again, I'm so used to, I listen to tons of podcasts of businesses and starting. It's like, okay, the first step after you make something is you go find a contract manufacturer and you go have them do it for you. It never occurred to me that you guys might be doing all of this in house. You do it until you can't, and then you sort of fast forward, and when it comes to materials, no one. I don't know a better, more pleasant way to say it other than no one gives a shit more than us. So, might as well do it. And that's sort of the same story with Pulse. We manufacture 3D printers right here in Southern California. We make resins. We do all of our own customer support. We do all of our own fulfillment fulfillment's out of a couple warehouses across the country, not just out of Southern California, but. Did I skip over the fact that you guys also make all your own filament?
That's like a hybrid, right? Like,
okay.
some of our less expensive materials for filament are you can't do that in the U.S. and we don't have a facility overseas, so we work with partners. Not to say it's just like a white labeled off the shelf for everything that we have, but that's a hybrid model that we have for sure.
Okay. Gotcha. You mentioned Pulse, which is sitting right behind you, and there's no way that I wasn't going to bring it up. When did you start making Pulse printers in your history?
Like everything, there's a huge long story behind it, but the narrow version was we sold a lot of CME CNC 3D printers early on, but certain users would want like a Bond Tech thrown on it and an E3D hot end. So we decided we got approval from Steve and the team over at CME, but like, hey man, do you mind if we assemble these? Because they all came as kits. Okay, right. We'll assemble them. Hey, do you mind if we swap out hot ends and update the firmware? Yeah, that's a problem. Just they're your customers now, not ours.
Okay.
You're not voiding warranties necessarily, but let's also make sure that these customers know what they're getting, and customizing hardware and adding some of these components that we already sourced on our shop, E3D hot ends being the first and most anchored one, maybe even, just became a real thing that people were looking for. That slowly evolved into, okay, well, what's a platform where we could get kits in that are our own that we can then turn into something. And it really slowly morphed from a CME with a couple add-ons to a Pulse, built on a really robust open source platform that we just really like. You can configure your own. We'll build it, we'll calibrate it, and there you go. And we're not trying to compete in some market where people want to build their own and dial in their own firmware. We're like really going towards customers that are looking for that, off the shelf experience of something like really baked and ready to go. So long-winded story to say it's slowly progressed since maybe 2014.
Gotcha. No, that's pretty incredible, because I think about, I love building machines, but some people don't want to deal with all of that hassle. Is there a standard Pulse machine, or is it starts with 80% of a printer and like you have to check some boxes before?
No, there's a couple. Like our base Pulse starts at $7.99. It's got it's got all the components that make a great printer, and then from there you can sort of upgrade the extruder, upgrade the hot end, get a better user interface, get anything you want to customize, whether it's, getting to 32-bit to get some faster, more dialed in prints, specific nozzles on it. Then we found people were really buying Pulse and Nylon X together. So we created Pulse XE, which is a new base Pulse, if you will, of XE, which is like meant to print the materials that would otherwise ruin your extruder and your nozzle altogether by wearing them out. We threw a Ruby nozzle in, another component that we already sold quite a bit of, and a Bondtech extruder that's got hardened gears to be able to really take on the Nylon X material specifically. And then from there, that forked again, and you could configure it. We have the Pulse HV, which is just a big fat nozzle, large layer lines, hugely strong parts. Like, I'm constantly impressed by how strong some of those parts are. But it's all taken off on a life of its own, and we're, again, repeating a few phrases here, but we're just looking for solutions. Like, I genuinely think someone who wants to get a 3D printer is thinking in their head about making this widget. The machine, the material, that's all a pain in the butt of like a preventative ways to actually get that part that they're thinking about. So we're looking for solutions-based options out there that get people over that finish line quicker. And that's what Pulse turned into.
That's kind of a theme that I've heard from a lot of other people that started in 2012, 2013, is they started and they had a problem, and they kind of organically moved from solution to solution as, they worked with the community and they worked with their customers. So it's kind of cool to hear you kind of echo a lot of those themes.
It's all a very natural progression.
Yeah. Maybe this is something you can answer. Maybe this is something you can't. Is Pulse your favorite printer? And if not, do you have like one printer that you love always going to when you're printing stuff? Because you've worked with a ton of different machines, I have to assume.
We have some 200 or 300 printers at MatterHackers in the lab, and each of them are, their own like specific reason that we've got it, and whatever headache comes along with some of them. But at the end of the day, like my go-to printer is a Pulse. But guess what? When I've had a problem, we went ahead and solved it, and there's been 5-6 years of that iteration cycle. So I know every little nook and corner of it at the same time, and they've solved many Dave problems through software and hardware and accessories and materials. But that's not me saying I think it's the best printer on the market and everybody should have one. Like, if you're printing with Nylon X, we've certainly dialed that in for you. And even, succeeding with nylon also opens the door for PLAs and tough PLAs and PETGs and all those things. So we do think we have something where we've pinned towards the high end of the market in terms of you can succeed with Nylon X, a nylon that's kind of difficult to print and certainly would destroy a brass nozzle, and everything inclusive below that in terms of like material properties. That said, I mean, have you messed around with an Ultimaker S5?
I have seen and been close to Ultimaker S5s many times. I've heard good things. I've heard some people complain about the cantilever beds, but I'd love to hear your opinion.
Like, using the touchpad is as elegant on that thing as like an iPhone. Like, they have dialed in a user experience that is leading the market. Like, absolutely, no questions asked. Some fancy engineer from Tesla calls us. We're like, your time's valuable. Just get a bunch of, fancy Ultimakers. And you know what? They serve that, and they're hugely robust in terms of printing materials. And I'll go polar opposite there and say Creality's opened a market to people, again, that didn't think they could afford it, didn't want to deal with it. But a couple $100, yeah, let's go. We are now expanding the market and opening new opportunities to people that weren't previously participating in, desktop 3D printing. So my answer runs the gamut from cheapest to most expensive that we offer, and everything in between. Is certainly a little bit of extra spices and sugar for Pulse, but that's only because any problem that I've had with any machine, we've solved it with Pulse, and we've got enough experience to know how to kind of dial that in.
Gotcha. Favorite 3D printer or best 3D printer is always such a complicated question. So I love the way you answered it with kind of talking about which machine is best for which person.
Yep.
And what they want to accomplish with it. Do you want to be a guest on this podcast? If so, go to 3dprintauthority.com/forms to apply. Thanks.
Yeah, man, and I'll tell you, I funded the Kickstarter for the Creality print mill, and we ordered one of your machines just earlier this week, and I'm equally excited to get some experience on those. I think every time we unbox a machine and we open it up and we try to get it set up and succeed with it, we learn something new, and I really hope that those experiences will be changing the game of what people thought was possible and just ratcheting it up in terms of, the ultimate goal is to get it microwave-esque. The closer we can get there, the better. And it's just going to be a bunch of baby steps. So we're excited to receive it.
Thanks. I was really excited to get your order in my email. I've learned so much by developing it and learning about the differences in overhangs and layer heights and just the different nuances. So I'm excited for you guys to start learning all of those same things.
What slicing engine are you using?
I'm using IdeaMaker.
Okay, yep.
And I can't say enough good things about IdeaMaker. It's far superior to Black Belt Cura in my mind.
Nice. They made a good push for the succeeding at the angled printing. So I'm glad you're able to use it effectively.
Yeah, I'm really happy with it.
Yeah, the Raise 3D team are really great.
Yeah, that's good to hear. I've got one last question for you before we kind of close things out, and it can be kind of broad. So outside of what you do and the products that you offer, what's one thing that you're really excited about in the world of 3D printing? So this can be a trend you're seeing, a specific technology, or just something that you want to see more of.
Gotcha. I just, my enthusiasm, as much as I'm a mechanical engineer and I take hammers and rocks and nails and try to pound them together to really, solve any problem that I have. Chemistry terrifies me, but I think materials are really going to be the reason 3D printing takes off and goes both wider and deeper into new verticals, because the automotive industry will have their specific material that they need to send this prototype car to get certified, and now the bumper's made out of the real material, so they can write a quick document saying it's essentially manufacturing equivalent, so when we crash it, it represents what the final product will be. Expanding the materials will allow everybody to go both wider and deeper in what they are doing, and at the end of the day, the 3D printing industry grows when that happens. And all I'm trying to do here is advocate for the industry to grow, because I think it's a really cool solution that I don't know whether it's ready for everybody to have in their garage and teach, solve, never go to Home Depot again. But certainly with a 4-year-old, I'm super interested in her learning it as a tool. I've got a table saw, I've got a welder, and I got a 3D printer right here. And I think that is a really cool story. But there's still some barriers on materials, and I think those need to kind of get chopped down. Polypropylene is in my heart of hearts, it's the equivalent of nylon from 5 years ago, because it's the most common material used nearly out there, yet underrepresented in 3D printing. So our next sort of challenge, and we've already got a couple build surfaces and bed goops ready for polypropylene to be a little bit easier to use, but I think it could use more promotion. So
yeah, I agree. It hasn't seen a lot of adoption. I didn't have the insight that it's the most widely used plastic. That seems like such an obvious application then.
It is very common to interact with polypropylene on any given day.
Brilliant insight. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your experience and wisdom with all of us. Where can people learn more about you, learn more about MatterHackers, and then any special calls to action that you'd like people to take from here? It's all yours.
Nice. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate you having me on and sort of talking shop openly about the industry and the technology and the materials. It's always an exciting conversation for me. Glad we were able to sync up. We just launched a podcast, so you can go search in MatterHackers Podcast, and I'm sure it'll come up. Our first episode was a real deep dive on PLA, polylactic acid, and I went straight to the source. Sort of behind the scenes of every company that sells you PLA is NatureWorks, because they make the raw resin, and going from corn in the U.S. or another source of raw materials into a 3D printing filament was a really cool story, and I loved talking to Dan about that. So that was a cool first episode. Our next one will be on metal 3D printing on your desktop machine right there, which should be really cool to sort of launch and understand that you can 3D print metal right at home right there with some of the BASF materials that are out. But yeah, other than that, check out MatterHackers.com. We've got whatever you need. Hopefully we've got a solution for it, whether it's hardware, software, or materials, and we're constantly looking to push technology and be participating in the bleeding edge of that. So
awesome. Thanks, Dave. We'll look forward to connecting in the future.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks for having me. Talk to you soon.
Thank you so much for tuning in to watch or listen to my chat with Dave from MatterHackers. It was really cool to get to know him a little bit better and hear some of the backstory behind the company after being familiar with them for a number of years now. If you are in need of some filament, some resin, printer accessories, or you're just looking for some resources to up your game in 3D printing, make sure to check out MatterHackers.com. If you aren't already, make sure to go subscribe to 3D Print Authority wherever you might be consuming content, and you can always visit 3dprintauthority.com to learn a little bit more about me and to find all the episodes of the podcast. Until next time, happy printing.